welcome to another episode of Tiny Nest. I'm Kiva.
And I'm Jake. This series is following our tiny house project from the early stages through to completion and beyond.
In this episode, we show how we get power from the panel in the garage over to the outside wall, and then to the tiny house.
So we've had temporary power hooked up to the tiny house for quite a while now, just with a single extension cord. And we've kind of jerry-rigged some stuff on the inside to get the plugs on that we needed. But it's time to actually get some proper power, both for like the full amount and also both legs of the system, because that's what we have in the tiny house panel, and the extension cord can only possibly ever do one. The first thing I did was double check this panel. So this is, we're lucky to have a sub panel out in the garage. There's an attic access right above us here, right over top of the garage. So I popped up in there and double checked the path to make sure that there's no obstructions or any weird thing that's going to prevent us from getting over to the far wall of the garage, where the plan is to basically mount a box on the exterior surface and then transition to like an outdoor type of cable. So that all looks good. So I measured the distance to figure out the cuts of wire and got all the parts and stuff. And so on this end, I was very lucky to find that there's a thick wire that feeds the panel, and in the top plate up above in the attic, they drilled, like whoever installed this or built the house, drilled a huge hole way bigger than the cable, so I can just reuse that hole. I don't even need to drill or mess around up there. So I used a fish tape, just a metal tape, and basically poke that down the hole. And the technique I used here is you can kind of see the outline of where the panel door sits on. And just used a drywall knife and cut out, without going past where the panel door will cover, cut it open here so we can kind of get fingers in there and reach in. And then I've knocked out 1/2 inch hole here in the top. And so I used that fish tape, like I said, pushed it down the hole above until it hit the top of the panel. And then you can just reach in here, or use pliers or whatever, and guide it into the hole, poke it through. Then tied some string on and pulled it back up. And now we've got string coming right through the hole that we need to come through, and all the way up through the hole in the framing. Ah yes, welcome to the future. You see, I didn't do a very good job of explaining some of the details about this process, so I'm gonna have another go at it. Basically, we wanna get one end of the cable up into the attic, drop it down into the panel and be done with it. Then get the other end up and over to where it needs to go. We wouldn't pass the entire cable up through the panel until the other end got to its destination. That would be passing a ton of length through a difficult turn, and in this case we can't even do that because that would mean passing it through the sharp metal knockout where the cable could get snagged. If it got damaged and you didn't notice, you could end up with a dangerous bare wire inside the wall somewhere, and then when you get to the end, there's no way to get the connector on, so that's just not the way we do it. The other thing is about fishing. You generally want to send the fish tape in a direction that's easiest to receive the end of it. So in this case, we wouldn't want to send the tape up through the knockout into a wall cavity where we can no longer see it, and then try to manipulate it and hit some target. It might have been possible in this case because there was a large hole drilled in the top plate, but it's easier to just send the tape straight down until it hits the top of the panel, and then reach into that little drywall cutout that I mentioned, and then you've got the end of it. If we did manage to get the tape up from below, we could have just attached the cable to the end of it, pulled it down, and then been done with it. But since it's coming from above, we can't really attach the cable halfway along the tape, keep pulling the tape until we get the end of the cable, detach the cable, and then pull the tape up past the cable while keeping the cable down. That's just asking for some kind of struggle. So it's easier to just add that extra step of attaching some string, pull the string up, then you just detach the tape, basically replace it with the cable, pull the string down, and then you're done. We follow the same process on the other end. We kind of brush over it in the video, but you see that we drill like a fairly sizable hole through the exterior of the house so that we can send the fish tape down, use the size of that hole to get in there and grab the end of it, pull it out, string on, pull the string up, detach the tape, replace it with the cable, pull the string to get the cable down. So here's the cable. It's 8 gauge, 3 conductor plus bond. And I've sort of prepared it a little bit by stripping the amount plus a little extra that we're going to need inside the panel, and then putting the connector on. I really like these metal 2-screw connectors because when they're tightened, they're really secure. And so in this case, when I'm actually going to be passing this through the hole from above, it's going to come through the wall, and then when it gets to the panel, we can just pull it down tight, as you'll see, through the hole. And pro tip on this though is to make sure that the lock ring is off, because it needs to go on the inside of the panel. So I'll point that out when we actually do that. But then the other tiny little thing that I want to mention is that it makes life easier for pulling if the tip is tapered. So I've cut the different conductors at a staggered position so that it's kind of like comes to a point.
So I pulled the string. Okay.
Alright, we had a bit of an issue with the insulation there, so we had to stop filming, but we did get it through, and so you can see how I got the string tied on and all taped so that there's no major things to snag on here. And then because the metal connector is already on there, we basically just pull all the way down until the little neck threaded bit of the connector comes through the hole. And this is why we didn't want the lock ring on there, because now we're going to slide the lock ring up, and that's going to finish basically securing and completing the entrance of this wire into the panel. So to feed the tiny house, I've got a 2-pole 40 amp breaker, and I got to make sure to straddle, get both legs of the system onto the 2 different blades here. So this is a perfect spot. I'm just going to put it right below this guy, like that. Make sure it's tight. Make sure I haven't moved anything else. We're all good. Should go without saying that this is off, obviously, when I'm reaching in here. So that's in place, and now I just need to get the black and red under the 2 terminals here, and then the bond and the neutral tied down. Okay, it's all secure, nice and tight everywhere, and it's always a good idea to kind of, with bigger wires, to get it into the breaker, tighten it most of the way, then make sure everything's tucked in the way you want it to be, because you're going to be flexing and putting pressure on things, which could, change how it's sitting in the terminal, and then give it a final crank down and then not touch anything, and then it's usually the best it can be that way. And always a good idea to check major terminals while it's open and off. So I've checked to make sure these are all nice and tight. It's all good. So that's that, and obviously I'm going to leave this all off until we're done with the other end there.
Jake drilled a hole through the wall here, and there's a normal sized hole up at the top plate and a bit bigger one down here so that he was able to fish a coat hanger through to pull the string through. So this is the same as what we did over there, and Jake is in the attic now, and we're just gonna make this happen. So here it is, pulled through with the string on the end, and you can see how much extra we have, and if we would have had any less, we would have been cutting it a bit close.
Okay, I got everything I need to finish this off, and And I've cut down the indoor cable here and got it pre-stripped. It's always easier to do that first before it goes into the box. And I've also got, this is the sort of outdoor hard usage cord that we're going to use, that we're going to transition into. So they're the same gauge, number 8. And so the PVC box, so this is a weather box, it's got like a gasket around it. And the connector we're using to connect this is just a dry connector. There's no seal or gasket or anything on it, because I mean this is like a wide open hole right into like a dry area. But we've done our old technique of putting some weather stripping around it. We could also put it on and then caulk around it, but this is pretty easy actually, because then we just cinch it down and it's good. So that'll be dry, but it'll be protected by that kind of seal. And then obviously the interior is sealed by the cover, has got a gasket like I mentioned. But this cord and this cable will need to be sealed because this is going to be outdoors. So it's got this kind of connector, and I'll show a close-up of this, but it's got a lock ring as normal, and then it's got this rubber gasket thing for the, so that goes on the outside, so when you tighten the connector into the box it creates a seal. And then it's also got a compression sort of fitting with a rubber ring that goes around the cable, that when you tighten that down it cinches around the outer jacket of the cable and makes a seal around that. So I've got that on the cable first, which is always good. And I think in this case I'm going to put both cables in to the box because they're pretty beefy. It'll be easier to manipulate, get them all into the box first and tightened, and then I'll screw the box onto the wall, and then pretty much, well, then I need to splice it, but then it'll be done. So I'm going to start with that. What that would have been. Alright, it's all spliced up, and I like to wrap tape around there just to hold the morettes in place, especially when one or more of the wires is this stranded flexible cord stuff, just because it's really floppy, and when I go to shove everything, I don't want the morettes to like turn and come loose or anything. So that should be all good. And these newer PVC boxes are pretty cool. There's a gasket here that'll fit onto this edge here, and it's just got these tabs to tighten it. So just line it up and then crank these tabs in like that, and yeah, I think that's all the way in. Oh no, there's actually clicks. I'll use my screwdriver to actually get that closed, but that's pretty much that. Alright, and even though this is nice and secure in there, I'm gonna put a couple straps in. So now if the cable were to get yanked, it's got to pull both these straps out and then yank the connector and rip the box or whatever before any of the wires will actually come apart. So here's what we had before for a temporary hookup. It's just a little cord end into the power box, and then we just plug this into an extension cord. So I'm basically going to replace how this cable goes into this box with this big guy. Okay, I've got it apart, and you can see what we got going on in here. Here's the one leg that's not even connected, and then the regular extension cord has the other leg only, and the neutral and the bond. And this connector is just through the cover. So I'm going to take this apart and get this honkin' connector in there. And this box is pretty small. It's a lot smaller than this surface one that we mounted to the house on the other end. But I don't think it's gonna be a problem. It's fairly deep, and I'll cut, this is a lot of extra length, cut this down a bit and keep the wires short, and should be able to make it work. All right, beautiful, right? We got it all hooked up, but might be a bit of a challenge to stuff it all in there, so here we go. Oh, shit. Oh, need to cut this thing off. Alright. It's a wee bit tight copping, but you'll be alright. Once you get it screwed in. Never ever again should anyone, for any reason, use slotted screws. They are horrible. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Are you still filming me?
Yeah.
On the house end, I added some zip ties. The only ones I had that were long enough for these little thin guys, so I should probably put some thicker ones, but it will help with strain relief in case the cord gets yanked. It'll have to rip that off before it starts pulling on the connector.
Thanks for watching. Subscribe if you like what we're doing here, and turn on email notifications so you never miss a video. You can also find extra resources in the description below.
We spend countless hours making these videos for YouTube. So if you appreciate our work, take 3 minutes to watch the video in the top left tile to learn some ways that you can support us for free.
We'd really appreciate it.